Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga show. That was a shock because the intro was supposed to play, so there we are. All things going delightfully well this morning. Alas, but welcome to the Bundesliga Fantasy show. We're back again this morning for another awesome show. Really looking forward to it as match week 25 of the Bundesliga approaches us, joined once more by my fellow colleague and fantasy football guru and expert, Rune. How are you doing this morning?
Very good. Looking forward to the weekend and been thinking a lot about how to handle all the European rotation, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, no doubt. Big question on everyone's lips. There's been a lot of Bundesliga action midweek. Some big games for our side. Some big performances and some less big performances. Really, a real mixed bag. Great win for Frankfurt last night. I wanted to mention Frankfurt early doors because I know the Hey Eintracht Frankfurt podcast guys were a bit upset that we didn't mention them on the predictions of Monday's pod. So I do have to throw that in there straight away as a great away win actually in Holland for them last night. So well done to the Eagles. But yeah, let's get stuck into fantasy. Stuff for this weekend. So as per, Rune is going to run through his defender, midfielder, and striker picks. Whilst we're at it, of course, we'll go through questions that are asked. There might be a lot around rotation of squads. This week for sure. Just before we do get started, do make sure that you leave a thumbs up on the show if you possibly can do. Comment along whether it's live or afterwards. That's absolutely fine. Let us know your questions as we go along. Make sure that you sub into the channel, and of course, make sure that you go follow Bulinews everywhere on social media for all the best Bundesliga related articles in English. Righty ho, then we'll get started. Just want to check into the comments. Say good morning to Jay and Lawrence checking in. Hope you're both doing well, and hope everyone that is tuning in is also having a fine Friday morning. Right, let's get defenders up on screen for us all then, Rune, and over to yourself to walk us through your three picks.
Thanks. Starting off with Nathaniel Brown from Frankfurt, who was rested against Ajax last night. So that certainly means he'll start this week. And Frankfurt are playing Union Berlin at home. And I'm sure everyone remembers how Union Berlin did against Dortmund a few weeks ago. They were really fresh in that away game. So should be a nice matchup for Frankfurt at home. And I think at 5 million, you can't really justify leaving Brown out this week. He's already scored 3 goals, provided 5 assists in the Bundesliga this season as a wingback. So, one of the best attacking defenders in the league, and probably the best value pick this week, maybe alongside Tom Bishop from Hoffenheim. Mid-price pick is Dennis Wavro. Wolfsburg are playing at home against St. Pauli, who have really struggled for goals generally this season, especially recently. They haven't found the net in the last 4 games, so looks like a good home game for Wolfsburg, who got a nice win against Bremen last week. And Vavro it costs 8 million, which is quite low, I think, for the potential he has. He is a player that is good at winning duels, also capable of chipping in offensively, set piece threat, and as I've mentioned earlier, I know that he has that he's capable of shooting from distance as well. I've seen that often enough when he played at FC Copenhagen. So that also plays just a small part with him. And then finally, my premium pick is Maximilian Mittelstedt. And I was actually quite surprised because I just had a look at the defenders on the app and sorted them by form. And Mittelstedt is right at the top of the list, actually. I know he's been doing well, but clearly his fantasy numbers are really good at the moment. He scored at least 197 points in each of his last 4 games. and obviously Stuttgart have a great fixture this week away against Holstein Kiel. And just another mention, quick one, goalkeeper, of course, Urbik. Just wanted to mention that him as well. He costs 1 million and will start for Bayern while Neuer is out, and he'll be out for a while. And so at 1 million, I think you need to spend a transfer on getting Urbik in there. That makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, that's a big shout, to be fair. One of the interesting highlights from Wednesday night's game, Urbik coming in, and we might as well just pick up questions straight away, as David T, good morning to you, has linked into that, saying, bit surprised that Peretz was not substituted for Neuer. Is Urbik now the number 2? And yeah, exactly like David, Urbik is going to be starting. Obviously, until pending any errors, obviously in Neuer's absence. But it caught a lot of people off guard. I think, I'm not sure if it was Peretz, but that one of the other goalkeepers was just in the stands, not changed on Wednesday night. I think they were commenting on that. But when Urbik came on, the other keeper, so again, I'm not sure if it was Peretz or whether it was the other substitute goalkeeper had to come down and get himself changed and ready for action just in case Urbik got injured. But yeah, good point there.
Peretz has been out with kidney problems for a while. He filled in for Neuer when he picked up an injury towards the end of last year. But he's still not available. So and at the same time, Bayern trust Urbik a lot, and probably hoping that he can be the long-term replacement for Neuer. That seems like the plan. Then they also have Ulreich, but I can't see why Urbik shouldn't play after he was subbed on against Leverkusen. That says something about the role they have in mind for him, and also about the trust they have in him. So should be a nailed-on starter until Neuer returns.
Yeah, I think it was Ulreich actually who was the player who was not necessarily ready for action, shall we say. But yeah, good question, David. Thank you for asking that. One in from Jay. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well, buddy. 2 questions. Will Grimaldo start? I think that probably plays into our rotation roulette in a second, so we'll answer that. And second, thoughts on holding Orban against Freiburg. Seems like a good game to win. Lots of duels in. Absolutely. So Grimaldo, Rune, what do we think? Obviously he started in the week. Obviously a very unpleasant midweek game for Leverkusen. But obviously they have to lift themselves. They have to go again. Home to very still off-colour Werder. One for Alonso to answer in terms of his rotation. I've no doubt he'll do all sorts of kind of crazy things. He might even start a striker, God forbid. What do you reckon to Grimaldo starting?
He's one of the Leverkusen assets I'm less worried about, because they don't really have a real alternative to Grimaldo with Belusian out with a long-term injury. The only thing I could see happening would be to maybe play Hincapié as a wing back. But then again, they also need him against Bayern, and he's an important player too, who's playing a lot of minutes. So they don't really have someone on the bench that could step in instead of Grimaldo, and therefore it would be a big surprise to me if he doesn't start. And regarding Orban, wouldn't mind holding him for that game. It's a game that Leipzig really need to step up for. They're on a short-term training camp actually in Salzburg now to work on the preparation for that game. Marco Rose is under a lot of pressure, so they really need to perform there, and Orban is one of the players they will rely on to get a result and to show the right mentality. So not a bad hold, I think. I'm not even that impressed by Freiburg, even though they're on a nice run of results. Sure, they did well against a Werder team who have, been struggling a lot against any opponent recently, and some of the other wins Freiburg have picked up have been like 1-0 wins in games that could go both ways. Last week they drew against Augsburg in a game where I think Augsburg came closest to getting the win. So not a bad game for Leipzig, but of course there are problems at the moment. They need a result.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, I very much agree with you with Jay's point in the sense that there should be a lot of duels to win, because Freiburg will be very reliant on that set piece play, won't they? Something that they thrive on. Absolutely. And one in from Broody as well, but I think it looks like we've half answered it already. But nonetheless, do you think it's worth selling Grimaldo for this match day due to rotation risk? Would also help greatly with buying Mittelstadt. But yeah, probably unlikely it seems that Grimaldo is going to get rotated out, we think, Broody. But yeah, stands to reason. Obviously, Rune's popped, Maxi into his premium slot, which is, high praise. For a player and for a team that have been so, hit and miss, really, VFB. In the last 6 games, 1 win in the league. Some tough games in there, of course, and they certainly turned up for the first half against Bayern. And stands to reason that hopefully for VfB fans that they turn up against Kiel and get a morale boosting win. But yeah, that might be an interesting one to watch for sure. Whilst we're on it as well, Saad has just come in with a question. Good morning to you. Hope you're well. Don't you think having a BVB defender is a good option this week? Ben Sabaini, maybe, since he didn't start in midweek. Rune, interesting one in terms of BVB assets. Obviously at home makes them slightly more appealing, but they're up against a very resolute and defensively steel-hardened FC Augsburg side. So what do you reckon to Ben Sabaini being slotted into a team?
Yeah, not a bad pick, I think. Dortmund have kept 2 clean sheets in a row in the league. Obviously, they have an important game coming up in midweek against Lille, but they also need to focus on the Bundesliga and pick up some points there. But yeah, Ben Sabaini nailed on to start with Svensson out injured, as Bodie Fuller comments. I also like Ryerson actually as an alternative. He started taking set pieces for Dortmund since Kovac took over, so that adds to his value. Also a player capable of winning a lot of duels. So yeah, either Ben Sabaini or Ryerson could work well this week, I think.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely stuff. Thank you for those questions, guys. Lovely start to the show. We shall move on then to midfielders who are scrolling at the bottom of your screen. So I will just pull down Saad's question there. And yeah, hand over to you again, Rune, for your 3 midfielder picks for this week. Yeah,
so picked Oscar Højlund as my budget pick. I know the obvious budget midfielder to mention would be Tom Bischoff, but then again, he's in like 2/3 of all teams. So I just wanted to mention an alternative to him and the likes of Paul Nebel and the other well-known budget midfielders. I think Højlund could be worth picking this week. He started 3 of the last 5 Bundesliga games for Frankfurt. Didn't play against Ajax last night, so I think it would make sense to give him a start at home against Union. His numbers aren't exactly amazing fantasy-wise, but this is a great matchup for Eintracht. I expect them to dominate things, which could benefit him as well. And he's a player who's quite good on the ball, so could get a lot of points from making passes and maybe even having a hand in a goal. And my mid-price pick is Patrick Wimmer, who I mentioned towards the end of the show last week as a potential game changer, and it's safe to say he lived up to expectations, maybe even more with a brace. And this week, another good matchup for Wolfsburg. He'll have confidence coming into the game against St. Pauli at home. And Pauli are actually a tricky opponent, I think, in the sense that they are quite good at the back. and Wolfsburg have generally struggled this season, I think, to open up defenses that are playing deep. So they need to rely on the likes of Wimmer to create some magic, I think, just like he did last week against Werder with a long range effort. The second goal was quite nice. So maybe we'll see more of that from him. And then finally, my premium pick is Joshua Kimmich. And that's because he's the only Bayern midfielder I'm confident about starting at home against Bochum. Goretzka will probably start as well, with Pavlovic having been out with illness. But I think Kimmich is a more appealing asset than Goretzka. He's generally done extremely well fantasy-wise this season just because of his big involvement for Bayern. It's a great home game for them. So I think at 15 million, not even a high price to pay for a player like Kimmich.
Yeah, absolutely. Some interesting picks in there, and yeah, shout out to yourself, Rune, for that pick out on Wimmer. We were texting about it on the weekend, weren't we? Every time he did something good, we were like, oh yeah, another out there. And well, my pick we might talk about in a little bit as well. Right then, to questions. Let's have a look at these. Right, first one in from Jay. Knowing how Dortmund are defensively, would you keep Claude Maurice as a bench option if you play in 3-4-3? Unsure whether to keep him and bring in a backup defender instead. Okay, so Claude Maurice is a midfielder. Sorry, for a minute I thought he'd be a striker and therefore he'd be in your team. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're talking about now, Jay. What do you reckon, Rune? He's got that magic touch, Claude Maurice. High quality player, done excellently since he's come in to the Bavarian side. And yes, that's the reason that Dortmund defensively are not the sharpest tool. So what do you reckon is having him as an option, particularly maybe off the bench?
Depends on how you want to play the game, your tactics. Personally, I'd rather spend the whole budget on a good starting 11. I think 6 million isn't a lot for what he offers, but at the same time, it's a pretty difficult away game for Augsburg. He is that game changer, but it's not like they're scoring a lot of goals generally, and he's a bit inconsistent, I think, too. He has those games where he pops up and scores a hat-trick or 2 goals, but he also has games where he's pretty quiet.
He does.
And this one could be, it's hard to predict what this one will be, but we know it's on paper at least it's a difficult matchup for Augsburg. That's why I would probably rather sell him and bring someone else in.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. Your point about him being a player that maybe pops up and does a few different things in games, sort of thing that puts off our Mark, because he's a big fan of players who do things consistently rather than in big chunks. I think he was like when we were talking about Kleindienst being a person who at least scores 1 goal a game and is very consistent in that sense. Moving on, another one, quick one from Jay. Wimmer or Kimmich for star player this week? Well, if you went with Wimmer last week, you would have been laughing. And yeah, they're both enticing fixtures, aren't they, Rune? It's a good question, that. I'm not too sure myself.
I would go with Kimmich just because, if he doesn't get 200 points, that would be a real surprise for me. Probably get at least 200, 250 points. Whereas Wimmer could potentially have a game where he just does nothing, gets subbed off after an hour and gets 120 points, something like that. Maybe he has a higher ceiling than Kimmich, but for me, this is a game where I just know Kimmich will perform, and I know he'll do well. So has to be him for me.
Yeah, friendship game, of course, between Bayern and Bochum, but it never ends up too friendly because they often give Bochum a right old beating. So it could be another reason as to why you kind of bank on Kimmich in that one for sure. Thank you for that, Jay. David T. I think you will cover this topic, but I still want your opinion on Wirtz and Musiala getting some rest and not starting their respective matches. So big question on our two star Bundesliga boys. Rune are obviously both heavily involved on the midweek Champions League game. So you're kind of nodding your head, so thinking that you may be thinking that there could be some rest associated, particularly for maybe someone like Wirtz, because surely Xabi is going to try and give him a bit of rest and relief and maybe bring him into a game later where he's actually got some strikers on the pitch to hold up the footy ball.
Yeah, I think they will both be rested this weekend. I think that makes a lot of sense to do. And for me, it's fine to have Kimmich as coverage in midfield for Bayern. Regarding Wirtz, as I think someone mentioned in a comment, he scored hat-trick against Bremen after coming off the bench. So he's always capable of... he doesn't need a lot of minutes to create magic, but I'm pretty certain he will be rested this time. I think he's looked a bit tired lately, maybe not at his best, a bit frustrated as well. So I think it would be good for him to get a break. So could see him come on after maybe 60, 70 minutes, especially if Leverkusen haven't killed off the game by then. And then, of course, he could still do very well. The question is that enough, given his high price tag, that you expect him to get maybe 20, 30 minutes on the pitch? I'd probably rather keep Grimaldo, for example, who I believe will start the game rather than Wirtz if I had to choose between those two. Sure. I think with Musiala, almost certain to sell him. With Wirtz, you need to consider whether you think the impact he will make from the bench will be enough, or if you want someone who you know will play a bigger part of the game.
Yeah, very much so. Obviously, we're at the stage now where people need to be playing starters, I think, for those guaranteed points. At least in theory. Over to a question from Broody. Similar question as above. May it be a valid move to sell Wirtz? For this match day, I think he is more likely to be rotated out. On the other hand, he scored a hat-trick against Bremen. Very good point, Broody. But it does look like Wirtz may well be rotated out. So good weekend to maybe rotate him out of your squad and get in one of those guaranteed starters. But thank you for the question as well. Lawrence has asked thoughts on bringing in Xavi or Xhaka, the two X's this weekend. Obviously, Xhaka is a player that often is not rotated out too much, Rune. So that's something, absolutely to be considered in a must-win game at home against a struggling opponent. So stands to reason they'll have a lot of the ball and some difference maker like Xhaka to lead Leverkusen and react to what was obviously a really shocking performance midweek. And then like you kind of covered the RBL option. I feel like we tipped up Xavi on and off for the last month, give or take, and for one reason or not, I don't feel like he's always brought out the goods, just because Leipzig have been so inconsistent. So what do you reckon to Lawrence's thoughts on Xavi and Xhaka?
I think with Xavi, that'd be a bit of a gamble. Will Leipzig turn up this week? Will he turn up this week? it's been pretty inconsistent, as you say, Rory. So depends on if you trust Leipzig to bounce back against a Freiburg team who haven't lost in a while. I'm not so sure I would do that. I think with Xhaka, usually starts every game. It's a bit like with Kimmich for Bayern. Could also see him get around 200 points, which is fine. Probably not going to really explode. That's not the kind of player he is. At least not fantasy wise. But it should be a solid week for him. As Leverkusen will be a lot on the ball and will look to bounce back against an opponent that is out of form.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that question, Lawrence. Hope that helps you out a little bit. Lovely stuff. We shall move on to the last segment of the show, which of course is strikers. And again, back over to you, Rune, to walk us through your budget, mid-price and premium picks.
Yeah, budget pick is Matthias Honsack. You probably don't want a Heidenheim player at the moment, but I'm going to mention him nevertheless. I think he's one of the more interesting budget forwards at the moment. I've mentioned a few times on the show that I don't think there are a lot of interesting budget picks up front, but if I had to pick one, I think Honsack at 5 million could provide some value. I think at the moment he's their most nailed on starter up front. It's a bit difficult to predict who else will start, but Honsack seems pretty nailed on at the moment. He scored against Leipzig a few weeks ago, had a pretty good game there, I think. And Heidenheim have two extremely important games coming up against Hoffenheim and Kiel. And those two games, I mean, they can't really afford to lose any of them. They probably want to win at least one of them if they are to boost their chances of staying up. So you could keep him for next week if, say, you want a good bench budget option up front. I think could be worth a gamble. Mid-price pick is Nick Woldemade. I think he's been one of Stuttgart's most consistent performers during a pretty difficult spell for the club. And his price at 9 million doesn't really reflect the role he has for Stuttgart, because he's much more important now that I think anyone expected him to be when the season started. He's even on penalties now, and obviously Stuttgart have a really nice matchup against Kiel, who usually concede a few goals, and will be a game that you expect Stuttgart to win, and they really need a win too. So maybe a good option there. And then finally, my premium pick is Patrick Schick, because I feel pretty confident about him starting as well. He only came off the bench against Bayern on Wednesday, so I think it makes sense to start him against Werder, who are in a lot of problems, especially at the back. Marco Friedl is out again, and they're conceding a lot of goals. Cedera is barely saving a shot at the moment. At the same time, Schick is in pretty good form. He scored in each of his last two Bundesliga games. Mm-hmm. So I think that it could be a good game for Schick, and one of the more likely Leverkusen starters up front, I'd say.
Yeah, I think obviously Paddy Schick, from a pecking order point of view, seems to definitely be above Boniface these days, doesn't he? And got thrown on late on by Alonso again midweek. But yeah, that really is not stands to reason as to why he should start at the weekend for sure. Right, so we'll finish off the show with more questions as per, and whittle through everything that we can. Do put them in. Do not be shy at all. Right, let's start off with one from Jay. Is it as simple as a front three of Kane, Guirassy and Ekitike this match day? Kane against Bochum, I think you have to slot him in. Ekitike for Frankfurt, home to Union, having played last night, impressive win for them. So, possibly a good one as well. And Guirassy against a hard to score against Augsburg side. Rune, what do we think about that front three? Looks good to me, but there's obviously other options out there as well.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about Guirassy this week. I know he's in great scoring form in the Bundesliga, but as you point out, Rory, Augsburg are on a pretty good run in terms of keeping clean sheets. They've done quite well defensively. So not sure Guirassy is worth it this week. Maybe he'll score once. I think can't really see him like really explode. And then you have to decide whether it's worth spending 19 million on him just for that potential one goal. I think Dortmund also have a pretty tough game next week against Leipzig, I think, away. So not the best fixtures, I think. But sure, he is in great form. Kane and Ekitike, I think, those two would be pretty good to get both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Saad's question very much directly relates to Guirassy. Is there a chance of him being rested given the importance of the Lille game, the second leg of the UCL? Good question. Not too sure really, because what the Dortmund have to rotate with, and as you said, Rune, they need to keep on winning. They've managed to connect themselves into the race for Europe now because they've won their last 2 games in the league, I think. So it has brought them back in just because other teams, Stuttgart, Leipzig, Werder are completely fallen off. Wolfsburg have been, picking up draws. So, but as a result of that, they have connected themselves back into it, and therefore it'd be silly of them to kind of throw it away in a sense. They need to win. So it might be a shock, Rune, if we saw Guirassy taken out, like someone like Maxi Bayer starting up top on his own against Pauli would be, against Augsburg would be a really tricky assignment for him.
Yeah, I can't really see that happening. They don't have the same type of player on the bench to throw in. He's the only real target man they have. So, should be nailed on.
Yeah, absolutely. Question in from Goal Machine. Good morning to you. Thanks for checking in. Hold Kleindienst or get Ekitike? Good question. Haven't talked about our Tim Kleindienst just yet. We will know, of course, obviously the lineups because Gladbach are kicking off the Friday night action against Mainz. So obviously we'll know as and when Kleindienst does start. Obviously he should start, but at least it's something to know if you're patient enough to wait until 6:30 UK time to check out the lineups. But yeah, I'd probably still side on getting Ekitike. Nothing wrong with Kleindienst, but just a slightly trickier fixture. So logic dictates. But a shout out for our man Kleindienst, Rune. Still a very solid pick overall.
Yeah, he's been a bit disappointing lately. The fact that he didn't have a hand in any of the goals against Heidenheim last week was a bit disappointing, I think. But yeah, sure, he can score against anyone. But Ekitike's fixture is clearly better. Mainz are a really tricky opponent, whereas I think Union are probably easier to beat. And we saw what Guirassy did against them for Dortmund, scoring 4 goals a few weeks ago. So yeah, I think Ekitike's potential is much bigger than Kleindienst this week, even if I wouldn't be surprised to see Kleindienst score.
Yeah, for sure. Question in from Broody. If you don't have Kane in your squad, is it wise to buy him considering the upcoming Champions League reverse fixture against the great league rival? I think hopefully this is a fairly easy answer for us both here, Rune, is to get Kane in. If he's not going to be rotated, which again he is not often done, just again because of the striking options as an out-and-out striker that Bayern have. It is very wise to buy him for a game at home to Bochum, where he could really fill his boots, Rune. It'd be quite a dangerous thing not to bring in our Ari this week.
Yeah, I think so too. Kane is a real machine. He wants to play every minute. Even the game when he picked up that injury a few weeks ago, he still wanted to be on the bench and come off the bench.
Yeah.
So very rarely gets rested, and also he loves these types of games. Bayern playing against a relegation-threatened team at home. We've seen that often enough. Kane getting a hat trick in these sort of games. That would be a big gamble not to bring him in. I think.
Stands to reason that Bayern will probably also get about 10 penalties, as they often seem to. So he'll probably be ready and raring to go for those. Lovely stuff. Great questions, one and all. So I think that'll do us for this match week. Thank you to everyone for watching. Been great fun. So all there is really left for me to do is just quickly say again. If you can leave a thumbs up on the video, that'd be awesome. Again, if you've not been able to watch us live, do leave your questions and we'll try and cover those throughout the day. Sub to the channel. Make sure you're following us and Bulinews on social media. We're on Insta, X, Blue Sky, the lot. So do make sure you check us out. Thank you very much all for watching. Great questions, great fun. Sorry, just seeing a last minute question here from CFC Storm. Let's just quickly answer this one for you. Would you start Bischoff this week with Musiala, Wirtz and Elise potentially out? Last minute question, Rune. What do you reckon?
I would rather start him than Musiala, Wirtz or Elise this week. The question is what the alternatives are, but great matchup for Hoffenheim. So that would be a real differential star man in midfield, but could pay off.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that question, CFC Storm. Lovely stuff. Thank you all for watching. Really makes a difference, these questions coming in. Great community, like I say, every week. And thank you, Rune. We'll catch you next time. Enjoy your footy all. Cheers.
Bye.